You know, living in America, I never thought that I had to question who I was. I was born here, so I'm American, aren't I? Sadly, having yellow skin and almond-shaped eyes came to be the cause of my identity crisis, starting from a young age. I remember it was during a lunch period in elementary school. I took out the food my mom made that I love so much, Korean-style curry, rice, and a side of kimchi. But the moment I opened up my Tupperware, a schoolmate next to me exclaimed about a pungent smell. I look up from my food, and I see all blue and green eyes looking at me like there was something wrong. They all scooted away like I had a disease. The idea that food, a concept that I saw as something that brought people together, was the very thing that isolated me. This probably sounds familiar to you too, right? When I reflected on this trauma, I realized this was the starting point of my racial identity crisis that I and 20 million other Asian Americans have or are facing. Dr. Jean Kim in 1981 produced a remarkable model that defines the Asian American experience almost perfectly. As a young toddler, it generally has been surveyed that Asian Americans had a rather neutral attitude towards their identity. But it isn't until early grade school years that they face their first stint of racism and discrimination. For me, it wasn't until my food got thrown in my face that I realized that I would be treated differently by my peers just because I looked different. That was where I first asked myself, what does it mean to be Asian when I was born and raised in America? All I know is the States. I've never been to my home country, so why am I being treated like I don't belong here? Jean Kim continues to describe in her model that this leads to individuals disassociating from their Asianness and gravitating to wanting to assimilate into whiteness as much as they can. The question of who am I also rings in Erik Erikson's model of psychosocial development. The stage of finding your identity and overcoming role confusion, although usually applicable to individuals in their adolescent years, can ring true to Asian Americans throughout their whole life due to the microaggressions that we face. We feel uncomfortable in what the mirror sees and what we really think of ourselves. We don't fit in school that well, but we don't fit in our local church group that well either. Family gatherings are awkward, so we keep our headphones in to drown out our culture. Sound like you? The disruption in one's Asian American identity also plays a huge role in how they conceptualize their self-concept and their self-worth. The unfair expectations that Asian Americans have, fulfilling their parents' American dream, being expected to become a doctor or a lawyer, all strains the individual. This is all supported by large reports of stress, anxiety, and depression in young Asian Americans. The inherent cultural ideal of perfectionism also is perpetuated, thus birthing the model minority stereotype. Their development in self-esteem and self-worth are reported to be stunted due to this stereotype, but the APA reported in 2012 that less than 9% seek professional help. In a systemic lens, a lot of it can be pointed back to historical policies that the United States enacted against the Asian community. Everything ranging from the Page Act, Chinese Exclusion Act, and Japanese internment camps during World War II all play a role in how the white man views the Asian here. Chink, gook, yellows, these were all terms perpetuated at the Asian model. And that leads me to the here and now. What can I recommend Asian Americans do to alleviate their ethnic cognitive dissonance and to help reduce their experience of stress, anxiety, and depression and low reports of self-worth? I would say that whatever stage you may be at in your journey, it is never too late or early to find avenues and manners to bring your biracial identity into harmony. Number 1. Be proud. Learn about your ethnic heritage and culture, as beauty can be found in exploring your roots. Please, I swear, just be open to it. Secondly, don't see Asianness and Americanness as separate. It's actually a privilege to be positioned as a bridging model in America for white people and people of color to come together. Thirdly, reject the model minority stereotype. We have to learn to let go of this undeserved pressure from our parents and society as a whole to relieve strain on our mental health. Lastly, embrace your language. As simple as it sounds, stories of Asian Americans coming to terms with their Asianness by learning their language has shown large dividends in synthesizing their dual identity. I know, the idea of seeking help, especially professional help, sounds scary. It's truly a foreign concept in our community. The idea of seeking counseling services for whatever reason for us as immigrant descendants carries a sense of shame and guilt. But the risks to our mental health and increased anxiety and depression aren't worth it anymore. It's time to break the stigma and normalize getting professional help. Let's raise the 9% and embrace self-care wholeheartedly.